Good to go. Rafael Lovato Jr. in the house on the Onnit Podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here, brother.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. We had a chance. Me, Curtis Hembroff, and our boy Andrew Craig told me you were coming in town, and I was like, man, we got to do a private. We got to get some mat time with you. That was exceptional, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've followed you in your career. I heard about you in jiu-jitsu, but I'm a fan of jiu-jitsu. Never watched a whole lot, competed myself, that kind of stuff, but mostly was just invested in the time. Like the only time I'd watch videos was really to scope out an opponent and preparation, that kind of thing. Watched you in MMA. That's been fucking incredible to see your rise in MMA and to see how well you've done, especially when you look at the history of really good jiu-jitsu stars that might try to make the transition. What got you into, one thing I try to do is backtrack a little bit here. So, was jiu-jitsu your first martial art that you started with?
Not exactly. My father is a lifetime martial artist. He grew up doing traditional martial arts. Then he got into boxing, and then he was inspired by Bruce Lee, like most martial artists were at some point in time, and that led him into the Jeet Kune Do route. And he was pursuing Bruce Lee's art, and that brought him into contact with Richard Bustillo, Danny Nosano, some of the most incredible martial artists of our time. And Jeet Kune Do was sort of like the very first mixed martial arts. The mindset was to be able to defend yourself in all ranges of combat, and take what's best from each discipline, blend it together, and create your own self-defense combat system. And so whenever I was a child, I was born in Ohio. My dad was the assistant instructor at the Jeet Kune Do Academy in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I would watch him, train and teach. And so my first contact with martial arts was mainly through the JKD system. My dad had me moving as soon as I was able to move. He had me doing martial arts. And so, I grew up in martial arts. Later on down the line, he discovered Brazilian Jui Jitsu through the JKD instructor conferences. They would bring in different instructors for different disciplines, and they brought in the Gracies to cover their grappling portion. And he immediately fell in love with it. My father is a small guy. He's only like 5'8", 5'9", 150, 160 pounds. And so jiu-jitsu was really incredible for him. He fell in love with it right away, and he began teaching me as he was learning. And, basically now we're in Oklahoma. All right. So we moved to Oklahoma when I was 8 years old. He opened an academy there as well. It was a JKD school. And once he started learning jiu-jitsu, it began to transition into a jiu-jitsu academy. And he would come home, teach me, show all the students what he was learning. And he was going back and forth from Oklahoma to California for quite some time. And then Carlos Machado moved to Dallas, Texas. And that was amazing for us because, being right in the middle of the country, the closest jiu-jitsu was either California, Florida, or New York. Everything was far. And Carlos Machado was the first black belt in that level to come to our area of the country. And so then my father was going down to Dallas every Thursday. He would go to Dallas, do a private lesson in the morning, train in the morning class, drive back home, and then teach at night. And he did that for like 3 or 4 years. He was, Carlos's first student because he knew Carlos from California before Carlos moved to Texas. Carlos called him up, said, "Hey, I'm moving to Dallas." My dad, we got so happy. He started making that back and forth trip. He was Carlos's first blue belt. And, then I started traveling a lot. Now I'm getting to be a teenager, 14, 15 years old. And it became easier for my dad to sort of ship me out and, go here, go there, learn, train, or I would compete as well, come home, and I would show him everything that I learned. And he could stay home and focus on the business. Plus, he didn't like to fly. And so, it was a lot easier for me to get around than what it was for him. And, I made my first trip to Brazil in 1999 to compete in the World Championships.
How old were you then?
I had just turned 16.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so jealous right now.
No, I mean, it's amazing. Like, I got to train with, incredible martial artists such as Reciprocity and Dana Asano when I was a child. Then I got to, go to Brazil and be a part of this amazing revolution in the martial arts world where Jiu-Jitsu exploded onto the scene. And, be in Brazil, compete in Brazil, train with so many of the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. My senseis are Saulo and Shanji Ribeiro, two of the greatest of all time. So I've been very blessed to come across, some of the best martial artists, all in their own disciplines, in my time, in my lifetime. Fast forward down the line, my father and I became the first father and son American Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. And I've been able to, make a lot of history for Americans in the sport of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And now the last few years I've been competing in mixed martial arts. It's sort of like the fulfillment of my martial arts destiny, I feel like. Now I'm tapping into my whole life of training and being surrounded by martial arts and really finding myself and putting it all together into, my, mixed martial arts expression, I guess, so to speak, inside that cage. I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, you're doing a fucking tremendous job. 7-0 now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. This makes so much more sense now to me rather than just a jiu-jitsu guy who becomes excellent at that craft, which you are. And, you look at your lineage, it's fairly easy to see why you would have that kind of success, but to also understand, like, this has been a part of your family, a part of your upbringing. It's been ingrained at a young age. And then still that would be enough to see, like, okay, I can kind of connect the dots here, but it makes so much more sense. JKD essentially is MMA in its infancy. And there's so much beauty in that, but also so much understanding, like, damn, you were probably one of the first children to be raised in mixed martial arts. Everyone talks about that now. Like, just wait 20 years. John Jones will look sloppy. We look 20 years ago and we see Tank Abbott and guys like that. Nobody's going to look back on John Jones and say he wasn't great, but there will be another level in 20 years from now. Right. And that's going to come from kids like yourself that grow up in a sport that includes all things, that has wrestling practice in conjunction with jiu-jitsu, wrestling to submission, things like that. And really to see the evolution of where it's gone and to be right on the front edge of that, that's pretty damn inspiring and pretty cool.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm so grateful for, my martial arts life. It's amazing how it's all come together. Now for sure it was a different time. I'm a little older now, compared to the kids in MMA these days, being in my 30s. But, I'm happy for the path that I chose. I wanted to stay in jiu-jitsu and really make my mark, make my impact. BJ Penn was the first American to win the world championships as a black belt. And that was the only tournament he ever did as a black belt. He got his black belt right before the Worlds. He won it, and then he pretty much retired from jiu-jitsu and switched full on to MMA. And so for me, it was important to, I won my black belt world title in 2007, and it was important to not just have my year, so to speak, but to show that I was one of the best of my generation, and to stay in jiu-jitsu and really make my mark. And I really wanted to inspire other Americans and non-Brazilians that were in jiu-jitsu to, because at that time it was much different. It was so heavily dominated by Brazilians. It still is at the black belt level, but, there's a lot more Americans and Europeans medaling and doing well these days. But at that time, it wasn't like that. And so I wanted to stay in the sport longer, really make my mark, and I always knew I would do MMA at some point. I didn't know how much I would do it, because at the end of it, I wanted to make sure I would be happy and have fun doing it. But towards the end of my jiu-jitsu only career, I'm still doing jiu-jitsu, but mixing with MMA. But towards the end of when I was only doing jiu-jitsu, I was sort of starting to miss that, extreme like motivation, of, just that fire, because I'd been in it doing the same routine, the same competitions so many years, going against the same guys over and over and over again. I needed that fuel to light my fire again. And so that's when I thought, you know what, now it's time to get in the cage. And I just sort of took it one step at a time. But, you know, I really felt the connection of my whole martial arts journey coming together, you know, and tapping into what I feel like my father started inside of me, with his approach to martial arts, you know, because when I started training, you know, nowadays kids start mixed martial arts and they say, I want to be like John Jones, or I want to be like, you know, Conor McGregor or whoever else. We didn't have anyone to look up to. You know, my father looked up to Bruce Lee, you know, and it was just, I want to be the best martial artist I can be, you know, for the sake of the art itself, for self-defense, for combat, for the pure beauty of it. And that's what I grew up into. You know, there was no thought of winning world titles or being famous or making a bunch of money. You know, when we started learning jiu-jitsu, we didn't even know there was a world championships, you know? And so never in my life was I learning martial arts for the pursuit of titles or, you know, any sort of fame or money, you know? It was always for the pure love of it and the self-defense, the art of it, the expression of it. And so, you know, when I started in MMA, you know, I already had a great jiu-jitsu career. You know, like I wasn't doing it for anything else than tapping into, you know, what was inside of me. And, you know, ever since then, I've just been learning so much and really like exploring who I am as a martial artist. And, it's just been so much fun. And, you know, now I feel like a lot of that isn't there, you know, because people do start for the sport, you know, it's for the sport. I want to be on TV. I want to be the UFC champion. I want to be this and that, instead of really falling in love with what martial arts is. It's in itself, first and foremost. And then the competition aspect of it is you know, it's an honor. It's the pleasure, you know, not everyone gets to do that, you know, but, you don't train for the fight, you know, for the fight. You train for life, and the fight is just how you express yourself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge difference. Even in myself personally, when I got into fighting, it's really, I was using it for some form of outlet for anger, and just because I wanted to train just because it felt good. I missed that human element in football, didn't have it anymore. And it really brought me peace. It was an excellent way to tap into something meaningful. And, you know, fighting, even though I loved punching people in the face and wanted to exercise that aggression, it eventually taught me so much about meditation and going within and stillness and how to find peace outside of the cage. But it seems like you had that out of the gate, you know, like I didn't get into Bruce Lee until I was probably 2 years into MMA, and I had a Jeet Kune Do coach who trained under Danny Inosanto, and it's a different world. It totally is, you know, like, and, you know, you get into Bruce Lee books and some of his teachings, and dude's a fucking philosopher. Yeah. Like, he sees the world differently. And so to have that trickle down from your father and those teachings into you from a young age is far different than any fighter I've sat across from before.
Yeah, 100%. You know, like I said, I'm so thankful for that. You know, martial arts is so beautiful. Everything that I am is through martial arts. And so I can't imagine living any other way.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids too that get into martial arts do it for self-defense, or I don't want people to pick on me anymore. And it's not necessarily about simply enjoying the beauty of what martial arts is, you know, and keeping your sword sharp, you know, honing your skills, perfecting the art. How much was needed, you know, when it came to competition in terms of you finding inner peace and stillness entering combat? Was that ever an issue for you, or was it something that came naturally because of your upbringing?
You know, that's interesting because, like, I didn't know. I mean, obviously, in the beginning, my first few MMA fights, I definitely, you know, there's definitely a different energy when you're in camp. You know, when I'm preparing for jiu-jitsu competition, you know, as high level as it may be, I'd been doing it for so long. I was always very calm, very confident, and you know, I could have a lot of fun. You know, being around all my buddies and everything, and all that, going through the process was always fun. In MMA, in the beginning, the camp, I would be much more nervous, a lot more fear of the unknown, on edge, just sort of like, hey, I just want to be by myself. You know what I mean? Let me just relax. I couldn't just, I was more on edge, just more on
You
edge.
weren't loose.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had a bad training session, it would affect me a lot more, things like that. But surprisingly, on the day of, I was very calm, because I knew I had done everything possible and there's nothing else to think about. I just had to believe in my reaction. Just believe that all my life of training will come to fruition and I will be successful, On the other side of things, interesting enough, with jujitsu, there's a lot more variables. How the bracket plays out, the referee, bad calls, the gameplay, as far as guys stalling and using the points and the system, to their
advantages.
And also the fact that I was a very, accomplished world champion. I'd always have a target on my back, there's a lot more pressure. And so, many times in jiu-jitsu competition, I would feel a little more nervous or sort of uneasy the day of than I would for an MMA fight. But the camps, an MMA camp, now camps for MMA, I have fun. I've kind of gotten over that initial fear of the unknown. Now I've 7 fights. There's still a lot more things I haven't experienced in the cage yet, but I have a good feel for what it's like in there, and I'm very relaxed. I had 3 fights last year alone, so I'm very relaxed inside the cage. But the camp can be a little up and down. But now it's I've adjusted. But everyone, it's funny. Everyone talks about like how much harder it is, or don't get hurt, be careful. And, oh, it's so crazy what you're doing. But you know what? Everything is hard. Jiu-jitsu is hard too. You know what I mean? Jiu-jitsu, I would have multiple matches throughout the day, up, down, maybe 2 days of competition. You fight like, a certain amount of matches one day, then the next day you have more matches, So, I would say that a lot of my experience in jiu-jitsu definitely helped in MMA transition over. But they're 2 totally different things, and it's just a different vibe, and you have to learn to enjoy all of it.
Yeah, 100%. You get more out of that looking back on it. Daniel Cormier talked to me about that one time. He said, there'll come a time in our lives. He probably thought I'd continue fighting with him our whole careers, but there'll come a time when we look back on this and we remember the camps, we remember the fights. And you want to remember that laughing. You want to remember that smiling. You don't want to look back and think of how fucking nervous you were and how shitty it was.
Yeah.
The grind, and he's big on embrace the grind and that kind of lingo. But the point is like, and that parallels into life. There's times in life where you got to knuckle down on your day job and just grind and go through some shit that maybe is a rough spot. But it's perspective. It's how you look at that shifts it. Because when you look back on that could have been, all that time was spent the same. It's just how you looked at it in the middle of it. It's how you were when you were present.
Exactly.
Were you in fear? Were you fucking worried about all the variables? Or did you appreciate what was going on and what you had going for you?
Yeah. And nowadays I feel, as you get older, you learn that more. You know what I mean? You learn more about life, who you are, and perspective, and trying to be more present and enjoy the moment and everything. And so I'm happy that I waited as long as I did to do MMA, because I already knew who I was, as a person before I got into the cage, instead of trying to find myself inside that cage, where it could go really wrong. I pretty much already knew who I was, and I knew what I was doing it for before I ever stepped foot in that cage. And the process, I am definitely, I have a extreme personality, I guess, and I'm definitely addicted to competition, the adrenaline and everything, and challenging yourself. And man, the fight camp and the process that you go through for those 8 weeks before you get into the cage, like I said, it was scary at first, but man, now I love it so much, because I have my father in my corner for all my fights. I have my Muay Thai coach, who is also one of my Jiu-Jitsu black belts. We've been training together for 10 years. His name is Mauricio. His system is Evolução Thai. He's amazing, amazing. One of the greatest martial artists I've ever, had the privilege to learn from. And he's also my student. And then my jiu-jitsu brother, Shanji Hibero, one of the greatest of all time. We've been through it all together. We've been training together for almost 15 years. Those are the three people in my corner, and I'm surrounded by my students, my martial arts brothers, you know what I mean? And it just, when I look around and I really like put it all into perspective and I just think about my life and the training and who I'm representing and who's behind me, the amount of love you feel for an MMA fight, it's different than a jiu-jitsu tournament, Yeah, sure, everyone's rooting for you, they're thinking about you, but when you're inside the cage, it's another level, their hearts are with you. They don't want you to get hurt. They know how hard you worked. And when you feel that and you go in there, man, I'm just so like supercharged, and I'm very happy too. And I've definitely, when it's over and we're celebrating and I'm looking back and I'm just like, oh man, I'm almost sad that it's over. It's like, it's fun to celebrate, and everything. But it's like, I wish we could go back a month ago or 2 weeks ago, and then it makes me definitely look forward for the next one, So yeah, I definitely enjoy it a lot.
Hell yeah, brother. You got a fucking amazing camp and amazing lineage.
Yes.
You touched on something earlier about, the typical language now that gets thrown around. And a lot of that has to do with guys like Dana White just fucking sandblasting a lot of my teammates at AKA. And these guys are training too hard. That's why they keep getting hurt and this and that. And you're talking about injuries. There's a fine line of overtraining and knowing, and it's hard for guys to scale back when you have a competition coming up. It seems like from your background, you've got a better grasp of listening to your body than most guys. How does that pan out in the fight camp if you start feeling run down? Your coaches know you well. Your dad's in your corner. Is it fairly easy for them to scale back for you?
Yes and no. At the end of it, like, you also have to recognize, because they don't know how you feel. Only you know how you feel, and so I, on the other hand, like, I had that other mindset, especially when I was younger, where it was, go as hard as you can pretty much every day.
Yeah, suck it up, pussy. Rub dirt on it, right?
Yeah. I would always in the back of my mind be thinking, okay, what's my opponent doing? Like, he can't be working harder than me today. No one can deserve this more than me, so if he's working harder, he's going to deserve it more. So, and I would play with my head all the time. And I would definitely overtrain 100%. I was overtraining a lot. And if it wasn't physical, it was also mental. It was just like, I couldn't shut off. I couldn't let myself think it was okay to, rest, but I had a life-changing injury that really brought everything into perspective. It put the pause button on my life. At the end of 2014, I tore my pec tendon, and it's a pretty major event. I had to have surgery. It was the first surgery of my life, and basically a 6-month recovery process, 9 months until I competed again, and a full year before I didn't feel anything anymore. So that was between 2014 to the summer of 2015. And, like, I had been in that jiu-jitsu, season, sort of, Europeans, Pan Ams, Worlds, then we go to Nogi, and I was competing from January to November, December, basically every year since I was 15, 16 years old, all the way until I'm 30 years old. And, basically half my life had been the same thing, and I was abusing it. I felt like I had to do it. My performances at the end were sort of up and down because I wasn't always inspired. Sometimes I was tired, my body was broken down, and I wasn't always there. I was always getting on the podium, but it wasn't always my best, and then I got that injury, and everything stopped. And I realized that, I was abusing my body, and I was competing for the sake of competing instead of really loving it, you know, and being 100% inspired every time. And, you know, it also gave me peace because I had to come to terms with, well, what if this is it? What if I don't come back? You know, what if I'm not the same? You know, I mean, I was hearing from people about how they never were the same after that sort of injury. And one thing that was always sort of eating me up inside was the fact that I'd only won the worlds once in the gi. I'd won multiple world titles in no gi, and I had other great performances, but at the Mundials, the traditional world championships in the gi, I was an 8-time medalist, 1 gold, 1 silver, and 6 bronzes. And those bronzes really ate me up. And I was like, man, I know I'm better than a 1-time world champion. I know I'm better than that. And that's why every year I was doing the same thing, because I said, oh, I got to win it again. I got to win it again. I got to win it again. And it wasn't a successful year unless I won it. And so at the end of all those years, I felt disappointed in myself. And then when everything stopped and I had to look at my career, you know, being in my 30s at that point, like, okay, what am I going to do when I come back from this? You know, am I going to be the same? What do I want to do? And I was looking back and I was like, you know what? It's okay. You know what I mean? I made my mark. Definitely impacted a lot of people. I get to, you know, travel the world, teach, and I became at peace at not getting that second world title. And coming back, I said, you know what? I'm only going to do what I'm totally inspired for. You know, I don't feel like I have to compete at the Worlds anymore. You know, the Worlds, in fact, is the most difficult tournament for me because I'm coaching my students for multiple days before I even step foot on the mat. You know, I have to compete for 2 days. You know, once you get older, it's hard to
run it back.
Yeah, man. You wake up the next day sore. Oh my gosh.
24-hour weight cut.
Exactly.
Coming in on weight.
Exactly. And so I said, you know what? I want to be 100% inspired. I only want to put myself out there when I can be at my best, you know? And so I started doing mainly just super fights, you know, bigger events where I can, you know, just focus on one opponent, you know, but I would go against really great guys, you know, I could kind of pick and choose who I wanted to face. And then I said, you know what, MMA is something I really want to devote myself to and make a run at something special. And so after that, I also said, you know, let's do a lot of MMA. Let's go for it. And so I just basically have been doing jiu-jitsu super fights in between my MMA fights. And, you know, it's been amazing. Now, you know, I've been able to really figure out how to be at my best every time I'm out there. I'm having a lot more fun. And in that time frame, you know, the reason why we're talking about this, you brought it up, I've learned to respect my body, you know, and I have a whole new routine, a whole new process, because that injury was like, it was a wake-up call, you know, on how I was treating my body. And so now, you know, I appreciate the recovery so much. And I recover just as much as I train, you know. And, you know, like I had a great strength and conditioning coach who would preach to me about recovery, and he would help me a lot, but a lot of it was in one ear and out the other, you know. I didn't fully embrace it until I got hurt. And now, you know, I feel like my routine has just multiplied. I'm happier, you know, because I can train better. And I've learned how to switch my mindset where it was like, it was only a productive training day if I killed myself, you know. No, you know, if I spend an hour doing yoga or stretching or going for a walk, you know, doing mobility and things like that, that is part of my training. You know, that is part of my meditation, getting my mind right. Now it's like, I don't see that as a waste of time. Now it's like, no, this is making my body better. It's making me recover better, which makes me happier because I feel better. And then it makes me train better, which also makes me happier. You know, I feel better when I'm training. So now I have a really dialed in process, and that's why I feel like I'm going to be able to, you know, compete longer than most. And, you know, I'm 34 and I still feel like I'm in my prime and ready to keep going.
Hey, 100%, brother. sounds like we all figure out a way to make our way up the mountain, you know, and some of those, there's more roadblocks and stumbling than others, but it sounds like that one injury really helped you facilitate a mindset that takes your body into consideration and puts a focus on recovery and some of these different tools. We know you just got out of the cryo tub. What are some of the tools and tactics that you use to help your body heal outside of?
Man, I do a lot. So I do a lot of foam rolling, you know, definitely a lot of stretching, mobility. Last year I was fortunate enough to come across a new teacher in my life. His name is Cameron Shane. He is a freeform movement specialist. He's basically the innovator and creator of freeform movement. He's also a martial artist. He ended up watching one of my fights online and just invited me to come train with him. And I took him up on that offer. And, you know, I've been spending time with him, worked with him a few times now out in Miami. He was a part of my last fight camp. And, you know, I love that, you know, just moving, you know, and becoming a better mover, which is basically what martial arts is.
Is that more like animal flow or parkour, or what kind of style of movement patterns?
You know, it's hard to explain what it is. It's hard to give it just one term.
Yeah.
Definitely animal style, you know, animal flow. It's kind of a little bit of mix of yoga, mobility. You know, there's a lot of like sort of calisthenics in it involved too, gymnastic type stuff. Basically, the way he says it is, you know, every movement has sort of an energy, and you carry that into the next movement, and you just flow. You know, you just sort of follow your body, whatever it's telling you to do. It's telling you to go here, you go there. You might be on your butt, you might be on your back, you might be on your knees crawling, you might come up to your feet for a second, and you just, you know, you might roll, like you just kind of keep moving. And then, you know, you dial those movements in to where you have control of every ounce of or every inch of your body. And, you know, you're just breathing and you're just going with it. You know, it's really meditative. It's a lot like yoga, but more movement, you know, you don't stop, you don't get stuck, and there's no real pattern. You know, you can kind of explore beyond any set pattern. But I've really enjoyed doing that. So shout out to Cameron out there in Miami at Budokan University. But you know, I do a lot of stuff, man. Epsom salt baths, cold shower, you know, like the Wim Hof type stuff.
Oh yeah.
Cryotherapy, you know, the gym where I train at now, my strength and conditioning coach, Luke Tyree, he just moved into a new place where he's partnered up with like a therapy center. They have hot cold tubs there ready to go. You know, infrared sauna, you know, I have infrared sauna at my house. So I'm big on that too. Just walking, you know, like take the dogs for a walk, or just, you know, just do a walk for the sake of walking. I love that for sort of mental, you know, visualize, you know, and just get in the vibe, listen to some good music or whatever. You know, I have a Theragun. I have a massage chair. I have the Normatec. Yeah. I have the Normatec pants.
Dude, the Normatecs are sick, aren't they? Dude, I got into those at a CrossFit conference and I was blown away.
Nothing better at the end of a training day, chilling out on your bed with those pants on, you know.
I talked with one of the head strength coaches of the Golden State Warriors while they were fucking winning it. They're still winning it all, but I was like, give me the fucking dirt. What are these guys using that nobody else is using? And he's like, honestly, Normatec, because it just flushes everything. And they do such volume, you know, and they constantly get ticky-tack knee dings and ankles and shit like that. But to move all that through, and then I was like, God, how beneficial would that be for MMA and jiu-jitsu, where you got guys, you know, slicing through with their shins across your teardrop quad, where you're getting kicked in the leg over and over again, and it's right where your quad connects to the knee. Doing
sprints.
Yeah. It's just volume, right? Yeah. And that for weight training included, weight training excluded, just the martial arts training alone is going to have enough dings there. But, you know, basically you pump all this stuff back through into the bloodstream, and you allow your liver and your kidneys to process it, and your body to move through that metabolic waste much faster. It's an incredible tool.
Yeah. Man, when I'm in fight camp, I'm using those every night, you know. So I've invested a lot. You know, I have more than most, but over time I've just accumulated it. and I see it as an investment. It's like, hey, if that gives me, one more hard training session, one more year of competition, it's all worth it to me. So, yeah, I've got a lot of toys. My house is basically like a therapy center. And just, I have the mindset for it now as well. And I basically move every day. The other thing too is, a lot of times, like, you get done with that hard Friday or Saturday, morning session, afternoon session, and then you don't move again until Monday, you know what I mean, or something, and you just lay around. That's not recovery. So, like, I immediately go for a walk, or I see my body worker, right away. I get in the Epsom salt bath. I do hot, cold. I get in the pants. Like, I do something for recovery right away. And then the next day I'm doing yoga. Like, Sunday is like a yoga day or a walk day, a lot of stretching, something like that. I don't just lay around anymore, just kind of keep moving,
Yeah. Active recovery is
Yeah.
absolutely crucial. That's
sure.
awesome. What do you do in your spare time for hobbies? Do you read? Are there any like interesting books that you've read or documentaries you watch? Anything like that?
Yeah, I try to save time for that sort of stuff. Many times it's hard. I have my business, my school in Oklahoma City, which is, 24/7. I have my affiliates, a lot of traveling, seminars, I try to visit all my affiliate schools. Plus I have my competitions. So, it can be hard. But I definitely love documentaries or good shows, from time to time when I can get into it. Um, I mean, for me, it's like so much of the day is training. And then when it's over, the rest of that time is dedicated to feeling better,
Yeah.
So, but what's cool is like, I don't need a hobby. Like, my life is so awesome. Like, I mean, getting to travel is so much fun. Traveling is definitely my funnest thing, or
Okay.
the thing that I enjoy the most. Like, just exploring new places, making new friends, getting to share my passion with other people. Like, I never met you before until this trip, and so, like, that's the coolest thing for me. Like, I got to teach today, here at the 10th Planet inside the Onnit Academy, and get a good vibe and energy from everybody. Roll with you yesterday, just making friends, the interactions, the real life exchanges, with people all over the world. That is definitely what I love the most. And that's blended right into my work, like, you see those quotes on Instagram. It's like, find something that, you love, allows you to, make money and also make you happy and travel or something like that. I mean, my life is all those things mixed into one. I get to travel, I get to be active, I get to, make friends and meet people all over the world. I get to learn and teach, and I get to challenge myself, in arguably the, most extreme way possible,
The greatest test of them all.
Yes,
for sure.
exactly. So, my life is amazing. I don't have time, and I don't need anything else to plug in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you teach quite a bit at your school back in Oklahoma City? Or is it mostly like other guys do, you do guest coaching because you're traveling so often?
No, I have some set classes that I teach. My students they're well aware of my schedule, and I travel a lot, and I'm also fighting, I'm in camp and I'm getting ready for stuff. But teaching is how I balance things out as well. When I'm in a fight camp and, like, I've just been grinding all day and had a hard sparring or something like that, I like to put my gi on and get on the mats and teach. Jujitsu keeps me balanced. And it's just like, no matter what mood you're in, how stressed or how, like, overwhelmed or whatever you can be, whatever's going on in your life. For me, when I put my gi on, I'm on the mat and I look around, I see my guys, I see my students, my brothers, the guys I love so much. My father started our academy 25 years ago. I've grown up in that place, and I have many black belts that have been with me, 10 to 15 years, and that's my family. Those are my brothers, and so when I'm on the mat with them, I can't help but to smile. I can't help but to be happy and watch them, I see the generations, I see my old students with my new blue belts, the younger guys coming up, and I just see the this thing that was created in Oklahoma out of nowhere from my father's dream, passed down to me and through them. There's really no other place I'd rather be. So I love to teach. I on average, I'm teaching 3 to 4 times a week. I have my comp training class I do every Saturday morning where we grind really hard, and I really focus on my competitors, my normal classes throughout the week. And, I have so many amazing students. So if I'm home, I'm teaching. If I'm home, I'm teaching. If I'm traveling, obviously I'm not there. I'm not able to teach, but even when I'm traveling, I'm usually teaching. So I love to teach. Teaching is definitely part of my martial arts passion. And I think that's sort of part of your role as a martial artist. As you learn, you should be passing that on, sharing your story, your experiences, your knowledge. Everybody has their perspective. Everybody has their way that they do it, how they learn to survive, and be offensive in their own way. And so, that's one thing I'm so thankful for is I do have many black belts. And so when I do travel, my students get to learn,
there's no shortage of great teachers.
Yeah.
There.
And it's the same, the same foundation, but a totally different style, And so, it's really great, but, I love to teach. I'm always teaching.
Oh yeah. That's awesome, brother. Yeah, you touched on something that really strikes home for me. I could always tell, I'm not going to name names, but I could always tell because at AKA, we had a lot of guys come through there to train, and Joe Silva, when he was running the UFC, would send a lot of guys to AKA, and there was great times. I got to train with Lyoto Machida and a ton of other amazing fighters that'll, be some of the greatest of all time for sure. There was always this sense, like we could tell, in the locker room who was withholding of information. Some guys would show up and they would fucking try to ask us for everything, and they wouldn't teach us a damn thing. I'd be like, hey, how do you do that one move you're so good at? And they'd be like, well, I kind of do it like this. And they don't really show you. And then other guys would show up and they'd be like, yeah, man, here's what you can do. I'll show you. Oh, this is how I do it, but you got longer arms, so maybe it worked better this way. And then you're like, fuck, dude, thank you. And then that idea of reciprocity is instilled, and it's like, I want to show you everything I can. Let me fucking give to you now. Thanks for giving me that new tool in the toolbox. And it's received, and that is how it is in life. When you meet people that want to take and don't want to give, it kind of pushes you away. And then when you have somebody that's just fucking giving and let me share with you, this helped me out in this way, not even in jiu-jitsu, in anything, that's a person I'm attracted to. That's who we're all attracted to.
Yeah, 100%. I've read different things before. Basically says something like, the quickest way to success is to help others, and that's what I feel is a part of being what I like to call a true martial artist. You give back. You are also a teacher. And in reality, if you hold things back, you hold things in, you're not only are you not helping anybody, which is going to, hold you back, but you're also holding back your creativity in the way that you know what you do. It's one thing to be able to do a move, but can you break it down so in depth and detail that someone that has no experience whatsoever could understand it and perform it just like you? That's what really makes you better. Teaching, like, you might think you know something, but go over there and teach that person that's on their first day. Teach them, what or some sort of technique or something like that. And all of a sudden you're like, how do I even communicate this? And so for me, I definitely feel like a big reason why I've been able to keep evolving in my jiu-jitsu specifically, and stay relevant, at the top of the world-class guys, stay inside that group for so long, is because I've been teaching this whole time. I'm always studying the game, what's going on, how it's evolving, all the innovations, and then I'm trying to, keep what I do, relevant and able to, like, I don't want my style to get passed up. Of course you have your your sort of game, you know. But if your
game's
game
always
stays the
evolving.
same,
Yeah.
if it stays the same, it's not going to work, you know. So you have to keep it evolving, right? And then teaching, you know, and passing that on, because my guys are competing all the time too, and I don't want them to use my 10-year-old game and then it's not working, you know. And so always trying to evolve, you know, as a teacher will also help you as a, you know, as a competitor. But yeah, you know, being able to break down what you do and communicate it, you know, and just trying to make the most advanced things seem simple to understand. What are your concepts? What are your whys? You know, you could say, I do this. Well, why? Why do you do it like that? You know, oh, because it feels better. It's just better. I'm stronger there. You know,
It's just better.
It's just better. Yeah. You know, but when you have to say the why, you know, and you have to tell them, because I get more leverage. I can move an inch here. I can move an inch here. I can understand his reaction. You know, blah, 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 blah. I can neutralize, you know, then you're really diving deep, and you can take what you do and go even further. And then you can say, oh, that's how it works. Let me connect this here and put this there. And, you know, yeah, you know more about who you are and why you do what you do, versus just, that's how I've always done it, you know?
Yeah, 100%. So you're 7-0 now. You've been fighting in Bellator for a few years, correct?
No, actually last year was my first year.
Last year was first year. Okay, 3 fights in Bellator last year, all last year. You're new to Bellator, and Bellator's on the rise. It's coming up as, you know, arguably the number 2 position in the UFC, and there's a lot of guys.
Number 2 without a doubt.
They're coming in to the UFC and doing quite well. You know, there's an exceptional level there. Where do you see yourself in the middleweight division, and what do you see on the schedule?
Well, after last year, I definitely feel like I'm one of the top contenders in the middleweight division. You know, it was kind of a step-by-step process. You know, I was the legacy champion when it was still legacy before it turned into LFA. And Bellator was the next kind of step that made the most sense because I only had 4 fights. And so I came in, you know, like unranked, so to speak, you know, and every fight was tougher. My last fight was against Chris Honeycutt, you know, who was like, at that time, I believe he was like 6-1 in Bellator. He was on a 4-fight winning streak and was one of the best in the middleweight division. And I was able to defeat him. It was the first time I went the distance in my career. All my 6 fights before that were all finishes. And so, you know, getting that victory over him, I feel like, you know, solidified myself as the top 4 or 5 in the division. There's a couple other guys that have some, you know, that are on good runs. They have Musasi in the division now too, you know, he just won his first fight at the end of last year as well inside Bellator. So it kind of depends on how they, you know, see everything, especially with Musasi. He's only had 1 fight, but he's Musasi. So are they going to give him the title shot? There's also John Salter, who's on a good run. I think he's like on a 5 or 6 fight win streak inside Bellator, with pretty much all finishes as well. So, you know, there's a few guys up there, but I feel like I'm one of them as well. But you know, I'm not like going to say, I deserve that title shot now. I'm down to do 1 or 2 more. I'm going to just be that much better. But I would like to fight for that belt sometime at the end of this year or early next year. And you know, go for it all the way. But I'm definitely very happy with Bellator. They're, you know, a great show, so professional. Everyone treats you so well. Everyone's happy, you know. And there's a lot of jiu-jitsu guys within the organization as well. So it's nice to feel like that love from the jiu-jitsu, you know. It's like, oh, you're, you know, brand new in MMA. You know, they respect me for who I was or who I am from jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, you're coming from something. You're not nobody.
That's
for damn
right.
Sure. Yeah.
And they've been great to work with. So, you know, I'm ready for this year, man. I'm excited to get back in there. Hopefully springtime, looks like maybe April, I'll be back in the cage. And yeah, like I said, 1 or 2 more and I'm ready for that belt.
Fuck yeah, man. I'm excited. I'm really rooting for you. You've been fun to watch too. I remember the first time I watched you fight in Bellator and I was like, is that Shanji? Like I saw him in the corner. And, you know, it's funny because like having not competed a ton in jiu-jitsu because I was always fighting and it wasn't my passion. My passion was Muay Thai and striking and things like that. But I got into it. You know, I learned from getting suffocated underneath Stephan Bonner, like I need to get better at this. And then during that process, fell in love with jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Everyone does.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It is. And I remember going to the Master Worlds with my old man.
Oh, nice.
And my dad got his black belt before me.
Oh, dude, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
man. That's something we get to have in common.
Hell yeah, man. He got his black belt from Dave Camarillo. Stayed with Gorilla. We made the change at AKA to bring in Checkmat. So I got my black belt from Leandro. But, you know, he had competed so much. And we were at the Master Worlds and he goes, you know, I know you're going to be watching for me, but anytime you hear the crowd cheer and the whole crowd cheers, it's two people. It's either Salo or Shanji. And I was like, really? And he goes, swear to God, there's not a guy in here that will not cheer when they're on the mat. A fucking foot sweep, 1 point scored, an advantage, the crowd's going to roar. And I was like, damn, like that? And really, you know, I had read Salo's book. You know, back in the day, it was one of the first jiu-jitsu books my dad bought. An incredible book. Oh, man. You know, you see the detail and you're like, fuck.
It's like the Bible.
It is. And there's just so much knowledge. It's always changing. But that in and of itself was like, wow, man, these guys are truly legends in a sport where everyone has their own camp, everyone has their own team, their own tribe. And it doesn't matter who you are, you fucking love these guys.
Yeah.
And that was really bad. I was like, God damn, that's your fucking corner. Like it pumped me up seeing that.
Yeah, man. I'm so blessed and thankful to have them, you know, as brothers and as my teachers and training partners. I've learned so much from them and they are truly incredible. You know, when it comes to jiu-jitsu, like their jiu-jitsu is timeless. It's timeless, you know. Definitely it has the old school roots, you know. Most people would refer to it as old school, you know, as far as its simplicity. But its effectiveness is timeless, you know. Shanji, he won his first world title as a black belt in 2004. His last world title he won in 2015, an 11-year span, you know, from being, you know, early 20s, you know, to like 34, 35 years old, still at the top, you know, and it's not like he's using a whole new set of techniques and moves. It's the same jiu-jitsu, you know. It's so incredibly technical and efficient, you know, that they don't waste energy. Basically, here's how I describe it. Hibeto Jiu-Jitsu is this. We might make a mistake and fall a little behind, but there's no checkmate. You're not gonna checkmate Shanji. You know, his protection, his defense is so good. His frames, he's world famous for his frames and back defense, back escapes. He's always in the fight, right? He's always in the fight. You never have seen him get dominated. His guard has only been passed once in his whole life in competition. But now, however, on the other side of things, if you make a mistake and he gets ahead on you, you're never coming back. It's the beginning of the end.
It's too tight.
Yeah. There's no way back. You know, I'm just so thankful to, you know, have been able to have access to that sort of jiu-jitsu and learn that. I feel like, you know, whether it's gi, no gi, you know, this time, this format, points, no points, submission, and MMA, you know, it translates to everything, you know. That is like the real beauty of it, you know. It's so simple that you can use it in all formats, you know. But yeah, those guys, I mean, Salo is a genius when it comes to jiu-jitsu. He, you know, man, I could go on and on and on, but for sure.
I fucking love it, man.
Yeah,
I'm geeking out.
And
got some jiu-jitsu listeners.
The Masters is like the Hibeto Jiu-Jitsu tournament, pretty much. I mean, they've always put on a show. I mean, Salo won with a broken arm a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It was incredible. And I've been able to double gold there the last 2 years in a row. That's my favorite tournament to do nowadays. Just because it's almost like a reunion, you know. All these old school guys have been competing against each other for like, you know, 10, 15, 20 plus years. They're all back together. You know, they're all doing it for the pure love of it. You know what I mean? Everyone's happy. Win or lose, they're all hugging and like, you know, just there's no like animosity or, you know, like everyone's just together. You know, it's not team versus team. You know, it's like this is for the love of jiu-jitsu. And, you know, yeah, it's a world title, but it's not like, you know, it's a big tournament, but they're not doing it for a title, you know.
It's not status.
Yes.
It's about competition.
Yeah.
It's about being there with guys.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
It's
My
so much
dad
fun.
used to describe it to me that way. He's like, trust me, man, you'll get older. You'll start going against guys and you'll only see him at that tournament. He sees guys from Florida and New York that he never sees until he's in Vegas at the Master Worlds. And it's like, fuck, man, it's so good to see you.
Yeah.
And then, oh shit, we got each other next, you know?
Yeah.
And there's no weirdness. It's like, and I've seen him give like awkwardly long hugs at the beginning of a match.
Dude,
because he fucking really cares about the guy he's about to go against.
That's so funny you brought up the hugs. I did like a little parody video of like the adult worlds versus the master worlds. And when I did the master worlds portion, I like with the guy that one of my black belts that was in the video with me, his name's Shiloh, we over exaggerated the hugs. Like we hugged each other like 5 or 6 times. You know what I mean? You pick the guy up, you hug him, you know what I mean? They raise the hand, then you hug him again, then you raise his hand, you know what I mean? You look at the audience, like everyone is just so happy, you know? But yeah, that tournament is amazing. You got to do it sometime, man.
Yeah, man. I want in. We just moved from Vegas. I was not bummed to get the job here at Onnit, but definitely want to make my way back out there. My wife's from there, so we got a lot of family there. It's a fucking cool spot. My buddy Tom Lawler's out there.
Yeah, I went against Tom one time at an
did
ADCC.
You? That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's cool, man. Yeah, and Noad Lahat, who fights in Bellator, Israeli Army guy, got his black belt from Ricardo Vieira.
Okay,
really, really good guy, longtime teammate. Well, fuck, man, it's been awesome having you here. How often do you come through town to Austin? Because you said you have a satellite school up in Dallas, right?
In Dallas and here in Austin as well. So I try to get down here about once a year. But man, I wouldn't be surprised if I try to take that up to 2 times a year. You know, this place Onnit is so cool. Austin is a great city. You know, I got to work out with Eric, Primal Soldier.
Yeah, dude,
while I was down here.
A beast.
And got some great sessions from him, learned a lot. Meet you, you know, taught here at the 10th Planet. I had a seminar last night at my affiliate, Austin Submission Fighting. I have another seminar tomorrow. So, you know, I feel the love down here. So, you know, it's like a 6-hour drive. It's not that bad. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I came back down one more time this year for sure.
Hell yeah, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you online? Where can people follow you?
Well, I'm pretty easy to find on social media. My Instagram is Lovato Jr BJJ. It's LOVATO JR BJJ. Facebook.com/Lovato Jr BJJ. Twitter, same thing. So they can find my social media. My personal website is lovatojr.com. My academy website for my school in Oklahoma City is okbjj.com. Anyone out there comes through Oklahoma, they're more than welcome to stop by my school. People interested in seminars can hit me up through my social media. And yeah, thanks Onnit for having me on the podcast, for supporting me, and all the love that I get from you guys. Definitely really appreciate it.
Fucking pleasure, brother. Thanks for joining us.